Hi, I'm Brittney George, partner in IT Advisory Services and Technology Leader at Weaver. Today we're going to talk about some lessons learned from 4.0 right now. We'll be going through a brief overview of the timeline of version 4.0, some notable changes, the new requirements, some challenges, and lastly, lessons learned. PCI version 4.0 has version 3.2.1 retiring in Q1 of 2024, with 4.0 becoming effective at that time. And then, again, in Q1 of 2025, all remaining requirements for version 4.0 will be required. We are only a few short months from version 3.2.1 retiring, and there are several observations we've seen with the introduction of and transition to some of the new requirements and scoping in general. First, let's talk about some of the notable changes with version 4.0 and how those can be both beneficial and a challenge to organizations. We're all aware of the changes to come and the purpose of regular updates to the standard, which is to ensure flexibility needed in the payment card industry space to meet the evolving needs in the security landscape and in how requirements are being met. As we all know, security is not a one-size-fits-all ecosystem, and the PCI requirements provide a continuous review and editing process to address this. There are 64 new requirements, including the 13 requirements that are effective immediately for any version 4.0 assessments, and the remaining 51 requirements will be effective on March 31st of 2025. The introduction of roles and responsibilities for requirements labeled X.1.2 is something that is going to be a new update for this version. Network security controls are going to encompass a broader range of technologies in addition to just firewalls and routers. Requirement 8 will now require MFA for all access into the cardholder data environment. While in place with remediation is being removed, there will be an option to document areas that need improvement. The customized approach is another change. This is new and provides organizations more flexibility to demonstrate the methods they use to achieve security objectives. And lastly, risk analysis being introduced to allow an organization to define how frequently they will perform certain activities based on business needs and risk exposure. To summarize, there are 4 goals for version 4.0 as seen here. Continuing to meet the security needs for this industry in particular, ensuring security as a continuous process or something that is built into business as usual, and as mentioned in the previous slide, providing flexibility for organizations to meet requirements in a different way if they so choose, as well as enhanced methods for validation. Next, I'll give a high-level overview of some of the new requirements. This shows the totals for each requirement for each area. So for example, you can see for requirement 2, there's 1 new requirement, and it goes all the way up to requirement 12 with 14 new requirements. 13 of these new requirements are required for any 4.0 assessment that is completed now. 51 will not be required until March of 31st of 2025. 53 of these requirements apply to all entity types, and 11 of these requirements are specific to service providers. Next, we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing with the implementation of version 4.0. We're seeing some clients take this new challenge with this new set of requirements and different approaches head on. However, we do see some of our other prospects and clients dragging their feet in the preparation for the new version or simply just putting it off. The time to plan is now if you haven't begun already. The people, processes, and technology that will inevitably be involved or at the very least need to be considered in the transition of version 4.0 cannot wait much longer. Other challenges that need to be considered are ensuring that when using the customized approach, a robust enough risk analysis is considered in the process. In addition, an appropriate risk analysis should be performed to determine the correct frequency for the operation of a requirement. For example, for requirement 5.3.2.1, which states that a targeted risk analysis is performed to determine frequency of periodic malware scans. Requirement 12.3.1 says each PCI DSS requirement that provides flexibility for how frequently it is performed, for example, the requirements are being performed periodically in the requirement language, is supported by a targeted risk analysis that is documented and includes several other considerations. So if your organization is high visibility and or in a target-rich environment, your targeted risk analysis may require malware scans to be performed more frequently than a more maybe obscure organization, whether that means multiple times per day, daily, or weekly. There simply needs to be a documented and reasonable justification. So, moving on to some of the lessons learned. One of the lessons learned that we've seen so far is helping our clients understand what the new requirement around multi-factor authentication means, and that is all access to the CDE requires multi-factor authentication. And so MFA has changed in its usage for version 4.0, and just trying to help our clients understand what that means and all of the connections to the CDE, because that could be a huge change for any organization. In addition, log reviews and analysis must be automated. This could be accomplished through SIM or XDR options, but an organization must be able to demonstrate the operation of the automated control. Also, payment pages, so if you outsource this function to a third party through an iframe, for example, you must now verify where all the JavaScript is coming from for payment pages. And lastly, for this slide at least, ISAs. The importance of ISAs as we transition to a new version is going to be extremely helpful and in some cases imperative to help with a smooth transition in addition to the assessment by your external QSA. Some additional lessons learned is that the customized approach may require multiple consultations. So an example is vulnerability scanning. This must be a continuous process that will be repeatable, documented, and supported. And so just trying to figure out the right cadence for our organizations is going to be something, or has been something that we've seen that could be a challenge. In addition, requirement 12.3, remote access to PAN prevention, so need technical controls for the remote access copy-paste prevention for the PAN. And then customized approach repeatability, so particularly for those requirements that require a more frequency in their operation. And then another lesson learned that we're seeing, as I've mentioned in the past, is that the planning for the move to the new version needs to happen sooner than later. We've seen some organizations that have on their schedule later planning dates for the gap assessment or for the preparation, and so it may take a little convincing, and it has taken a little convincing for us at least to kind of nudge our clients along in order to have enough time for planning. Version 4.0 provides even more emphasis to enact security as a continuous process and not to just view it as a one-time assessment each year. So we are really working with our clients to implement this again, like I said in previous slides, that this is more of a process for your business versus point in time. Also, while the in place with remediation option was removed shortly after version 4.0 was released, it is still a necessary attribute to track and learn from. The emphasis on identifying and implementing improvements from requirements that have either failed or were weak and on the brink of failure should not be brushed off. This is an exceptional opportunity to make security practices and procedures even stronger. So use remediation to your advantage to strengthen your controls and your security within your organization. So just some parting tips for practitioners and organizations alike. A gap or a readiness assessment is crucial, and the time to do that is now. Another option that we've seen a lot of our organizations take advantage of as we move to version 4.0 is to ask the question internally, is this scope still applicable and relevant for the new requirements? And it also gives just a baseline opportunity to just review the scope in general. We are seeing many organizations, many of our clients needing to reconsider or even reconfigure technologies, including job roles and responsibilities. And this is going to be even more important with the new requirement for the X.1.2 roles and responsibility requirement implementation. If formal risk assessments have not been performed in the past, or perhaps they've been performed for other areas or regulatory compliance assessments outside of PCI, then there will definitely need to be a more focused, concerted effort to ensure that PCI requirements are considered for that risk assessment. And then lastly, this is the time to kind of analyze the organization and the PCI team and how they relate. So new requirements will likely bring new organizational shifts that will need to involve leadership and perhaps the addition or even the strengthening of PCI teams. That is all I have. Thank you for joining. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.